Hi, I'm Jason Breach from the Axminster Skills Centre. We're here today to talk about one of our lathes. This is the Axminster 1628 lathe. So let's go over what this lathe is and why. Some of these features that make it our best-selling machine. It is 16-inch diameter, 406mm. Between centres is 28 inches, 710 millimetres. Okay? It's very heavy. This weighs in as the base lathe. The top part, without the stand, is 96 kilos. So very heavy. That cast iron will absorb all that vibration. It's electronic variable speed. So we'll get to these features, we're going to show you a bit more of a close-up. It's actually very compact for what it is. So if you're not using that extra long bed length to do chair legs, banister spindles, do you need all that bed length taking up space in your workshop? So this is nice and compact for those things. Another little feature from the centre point to the underside of where the bed is 15 inches because some of you might want to put this on a workbench. Let's have a look now and get you in to look at some of the features that make it such a good lathe. Okay, so the major workhorse of any lathe has got to be the headstock. This has got some really nice, unique features that make it very ergonomic to work with. First thing though, with the faceplate, when it arrives, there's two locking screws on the back here. You need to undo these before you try and take it off. If you undo them, just slack them out. So these are so we can actually use the lathe in reverse. Take the faceplate on and off, there's a hole and the index pin. That will drop in the spindle in one place, got a hand wheel on the back. We then get our spanner, push the faceplate off. Check they don't graunch on the screws there, just unwind it. So there's these two little grub screws down on here. Our index pin on here really is just to lock the spindle. So we can take things on and off the faceplate, the chuck. So put that down on there. So moving along, we've got this cut out corner from here. Could have been left square, but they've cut it out, which makes it very ergonomic. So when your hand's in here and you're turning, you've actually got good access to get into that point. So that's a really nice feature. Going back up to the top of the lathe, there's a little glass screen, which we'll show you in a second. This allows us access to change the belt. So our glass screen, or plastic screen on there, you can see down through. So to get into the belt to change the speed, we've opened the door, we've got this belt, we've got two pulleys, a high and low ratio. On the top of where the motor is on the back, we have this lever. We can pull it forward. We can get to our belt. We can shift that over, change the speed. So that's actually now put it up into the high range. But very easy to do. No crawling around the floor and amongst the shavings. Lovely wide belt on there. That's going to give us a lot of drive. On the top of there, we've obviously got the lever, which is to do the bit, and also the tension knob. So this allows us just to slide this back and forwards, lock it in place. Again, very easy to get to, very ergonomic to work with. So the lathe has an index facility, so we can open the door again. It's down in here on the side of the pulleys. We've got our hand wheel. This is numbered on here, so we go up to 36. So 12, 6, 36, so they're all numbered as steps. Your pin to lock it, you screw this in. Now I'm opening the door, just really the fact it makes it a little bit safer that I'm apparent that I'm locking the spindle. We screw that in, locks it off. Nice and stable, no movement at all. We can undo it. We've got our display line. We can move it round. Okay, we go into the next pin. So quite easy to use. With the hollow headstock, we've got our hand wheel. We can turn that on the back. This is a little junior chuck we're going to screw on, which is a collet chuck. Due to the fact the headstock is completely hollow, we can go with something like a 1/2 inch diameter bar or downwards from there. This will slide through. We can lock it off on the collet chuck. But we've got that length that we can gradually feed through depending on what we're working. So we don't actually have to have that all out. We can do a short bit, undo the collet chuck, feed it through, do the next stage. So with that hollow headstock, that's quite a good feature. We can undo the chuck, take the whole lot out. So that gives you an idea of the length. We've obviously got that cut-off corner. In below, we've got this little display area. So if we just get some power, everything will light up nicely. We can turn this over by hand. The speed will show you what we're doing. We've obviously got our start-stop button. We've got our variable speed dial. This is all magnetic, so we can actually move the box and put it anywhere on the lathe bed. That means you might not be reaching round the object that you're trying to turn, coming back to here to turn it on and off. You might be doing something longer down the other end of the lathe. That gives you the scope. So we can move the display box. We'd be magnetic, put it anywhere. Also the fact that it's on the cord. This is stretchable as well, so we can go further along. So again, you're not having to fight around the work to turn back to one point on the lathe. You can position it wherever you are. That's a real advantage if you're right or left-handed as well, because you can position it for what suits you. So with the lathe, we have our start and stop button. We also have a belt range, 150 to 3,750, 50 to 1250. At the moment, we're on the slow range, so we put it on there, we can dial the speed up. The slow range will give you more torque, so if you're doing heavier bowl work, bigger objects in diameter, that's your better speed range. We gently take the speed up. Nice and quiet is a lathe. Take this dial back down, turn it off. So we've done our slow range with the on-off on the belt setting. Let's just move it over. So this is the high setting. So we take the dial down. We've got our speed range. So we press on, the lathe will come to life. Dial it up. Incredibly quiet. Very smooth to use. We can press off, on, we can go forward and reverse. So part of the reason for the lock screws on the faceplate when we took it off is you could run the lathe in reverse. So if you're left hand, it might be more ergonomic to turn backwards, reverse. Some of us like to stand in reverse. So again, you need to lock everything onto the spindle, but you've got that forward and reverse option. On the back of the lathe, just to give you a guide, we've got this lovely shaped casting. This plate on the side here, why is that there? It's one of the questions we get. It's the only way they can have access to get the pulleys onto the motor when they've assembled the machine, to get it in there. On the back of the casting here, we've got the hinge which does the cover door for the belt change. Then we've got the motor. We've said about the lever, the lock lever. The motor is a 2 horsepower inverter motor. High frequency, so actually it will run at those high speeds that we've said, 3,700. Nice and quiet with it being a 3-phase motor, but the inverter is all down inside this little box. Nice cable guard and everything else on this, so it actually protects everything beautifully. So the cables that control the lathe, we've obviously got the one that goes off to the control box, the power, this too, and this protection bit go into the motor. So the motor's 2 horsepower. This is where the inverter box is stored within the bed section. So actually it protects it really nicely. Gets it out of the way, keeps it dustproof to a degree. It also means the lathe is a lot more compact. Okay, so back to the headstock just a second. Let's just put things back together. Now, another nice feature with the headstock is the fact we can move it along the bed. That will affect maybe your body stance where you're standing. So you can move it in so it's more compact. We've got this long lever that locks it in place, releases it so we can move it up and down. We can also swing the head. So we've got a pin. We're going to do the pin. The lathe will go around, has drop-in points that will set to. Okay, so we've got 90, 45, I think it's about 22 and a half. Come back round. Go quickly just back round to 90. You can actually have it more central on the lathe, use the display of the stand, make it wider, but that'll make it more stable to turn something bigger. Something like 22 can be nice for bowl work, so you're not leaning over the lathe bed. Now we can come back a little bit now. One thing that we get questions on, there's a little bit of movement here. There has got to be to allow it to drop in. When you set the lathe up, ideally everything needs to be level on the floor. This has adjustable feet we will look at when we get to the stand. Need to get that level to make it line up so we can get everything nice and lined up. Got to have a little bit of movement, so we'll lock it in, then lock your handle down. So when we move the headstock back, we have the location point on the end here, this little bracket. It's bolted onto the end of the lathe. We can slide the headstock back up to there, lock it in place. So the bearings in the lathe, where are they? They're in here, they're sealed for life bearings. So there's a bearing there, so within the casting, it's pushed in. There's 2 more bearings over here, so that's a really big bridging area. That helps support the workpiece that we're doing. We haven't got a casting that drops away halfway and then nothing supporting the hand wheel. So moving away from the headstock a bit, let's just slide this back down. Get this beautifully finished bed, lots of welts in between to add lots of strength, keep it supported, stop it twisting and flexing. Really thick cast iron here. This has got to be over 1/2 inch, maybe nearly 3/4 inches thick. Lots of support there, very strong. Beautiful brush finish on the top. Not just ground, they go that little bit further. That helps things move nice and freely, smoothly along. Everything's accurately ground, both sides, so everything pinches equally all the way along. From there, we have our banjo. We move it in, it'll slide up and down. We can lock it up again, the handle, rubber grip again to give you lots of support, stop things moving, stop it feeling cold. Tool rest, inch stem. We have 3-point location of where you can look, so your locking handle could go right hand, centre or left hand. The handle is metal, not plastic, so these are going to last a long time. lots of height adjustment, drop it in. Beautiful cast iron shape, nice rounded bit, nice stem for lots of support, easy to move. Even from my point of view, being the wrong side of the lathe, I can operate that. The bottom end or the back end of the lathe, we've got the tailstock. Got the lock lever right on the far side here. We can undo it, rubber grip, pushes down, has a bolt on the bottom to stop you falling off. It will move nice and freely along. I can move that one-handed. Nice and balanced, easy to use. We can pull the lever back up on the far side, lock it off. Very stable to lock. Again, cast iron, big barrel section. On the back end, the hand wheel. We can wind the handle. There is a metric scale all the way down through on here. Easy, simple to glide along. Up to about 100 mil. So 4 inches of travel there. The centre will actually come back. There's a self-ejection pin on the back of here. That'll knock that out. So we get that location pin, self-eject the centres out for us nicely. So if we move the tailstock along, clear that out of the way. In between the bed, there's this lock pin. This screws in, you can get your spanner, we can undo it. We can take this out. Because one of the things I want to try and get over is, we can drop this off. How light this is. The underside of the tailstock. We've got nylock, heavy plate, machine metal, accurately ground, all cast iron construction. But as I said, not overly heavy to put back on. Into there, my hand works underneath, back in place. Very easy to fit, lock it off. The pin is designed to stop us overshooting the end, pushing it off and hitting the floor. So, gives us maximum travel to work up to. So on the back of the tailstock, we've obviously got our hand wheel, wind it forward. We have the barrel lock screw, which is this handle, so that stops things moving. The other thing we have is the extra nut and bolt next to it. So this nut and bolt in here goes in, it puts a pin into the side of the barrel. So if we overdo the handle too much here, the barrel won't rotate and lose tension. That's a really nice little add-on feature. Makes it a lot safer. So with the electric variable speed, we're in the low range. We've got a bulb length on here that's just over 16.5 inches, hence the fact we've turned the bed head round so we can clear the bed. We've got it on the low setting, we can press go, we can dial the speed up nice and gently, see where we are. A lot of stability with this. The cast iron adds more dampening down of that vibration. We can go anywhere, so we go 2 first, start to get a bit of vibration, we can easily back it back down again. Very controllable. So if we take the headstock back to square, we undo the lock lever on the end, we pull the button out, swing it round. We want to slide this back. I'm going to just move the banjo along. One of the other things that comes in the books, it's a centre alignment tool. So we're going to put it into the tailstock. We're going to slide this up, lock it off. Need to make sure the handle's undone on here because we've got a little bit of play. Gently wind that up. The Morse tape will grip both sides. It will line up the headstock. There, lock it off. Undo the tailstock. Back. With the knockout bar, we pass it through the headstock, tap that out. So this helps get the headstock lined up. Okay, we've looked at the basic lathe and all the features that make it such a good seller. But there's a few optional extras that you could choose from. One of the most basic things for this has got to be the stand that it comes on. I can't understand why you wouldn't want it with the stand for these reasons, okay? So, the leg stands, beautifully shaped, quite ergonomic. We'll go around them and let you have a look. They obviously bolt on to either end. One of the loveliest features, I think, is how they bolt on. Really good access into here. Easy to get to, easy to do them up from a spanner. You're not crawling inside down in here trying to get to an Allen key bolt. So that's a really nice selling point. Our ergonomic design of this lovely shape adds a lot more clearance for your feet. With the leg shape that we have, we've got that curve that we said about from both directions. How the curve works here is a really nice feature. Something that you might not look at and understand why it's done like that. If the leg came out straight or curved the opposite way, it limits where your feet can go because your knee's going to hit that cast iron. So this is very cleverly designed with the curve and sweep. I've got lots of movement to put my feet. So that curve and that shape, really nice feature to help sell, if you like. And how are you going to use it? It means that my legs can move to where I want so I can stand at the lathe. That unrestricted movement helps me get the shapes we're going to want. Well, the end of the lathe, if we come down through, we've obviously got the bed cast on, we've got holes here, we'll go for those in a second. If we drop down again, the whole configuration is exactly the same and underneath. So that allows us to put the bed extension on. We can either go up here, or we're going to go down lower. There are welts inside here as a flat. You could put a shelf inside there, you can have more weight by building your own things in, you could put sandbags on there to help dampen it down lower. So one of the other features on the lathe is the fact we've got the bolt holes in the bottom here. This allows us to have our caster wheel set up. This will go on. So let's just see if we can set it up, give you an idea what it does. We can bolt into the bottom hole, just screw them in by hand for a minute. That also then means we can actually pump the lathe up off the floor, we'd be able to move it about. So it makes the lathe quite movable. One of the other optional extras that you can buy, Chute Bed Extension. So this increases the bed, I think by something like 300mm, gives you a bit more length. We can slide this back, a lot more length between centres. We can unbolt it when you don't want it there. So actually you can make your lathe more compact again. So that literally bolts on, 4 bolts from underneath, quite accessible. With the bed extension, it's also drilled the same location, the other end of the lathe. So actually in theory you could put one on either end, you could make the lathe longer either end for when you want, then take them off, put them out of the way. The other feature of the Chute Bed Extension, we can bolt it onto the stand on the pre-drilled locations. So this drops it down. So if we take the tailstock off, we can move our banjo, slide it off the bed, put it onto the Chute Bed Extension. We can also then run down, push the headstock along, lock it off. To make your banjo high enough, when you buy the bed extension, you get an extension bar, an extra long handle. So that gives us a way now of increasing the diameter from 16 inches, you get a massive 30 inches on this now. That's a nice location. Again, this is bolt on, bolt off, you can fit it as you need. We can obviously also move the remote switch along, put it down, put it on the end so it's nearer where you're working again. We can even drag it round, get right down on here. So it's nice and safe to use from that location. So with the standard lathe when you buy it, there's a number of standard accessories that come with this. So you get the knockout bar to take your centres out, the centre alignment tool to line up the 2 centres, a revolving centre, a 4-prong drive. Those are both Axminster made, one's here, 6-inch faceplate, index pin to lock the spindle, and the spanner to take the faceplate off. So those are all standard bits to go with it. Okay, so hopefully now we've run through all those features, you can understand why I think this is such a great lathe. Very user friendly. It's available in the stores. You could go online, have a look,